Hey, y'all. Happy day. If you're watching live, it's Friday. Happy Friday. If you're watching another day, happy day. So let me get myself all set up here. Make sure I can see. If you're watching live with me, say hi, hello. Let me know how is your soul today? So full transparency, I went to push the live button and I was like, oh, I didn't plan this out. This happens every now and then. I just trust myself that the things we say are the things that need to be said. That's something that I've worked on from my own past painful experiences, that what I decide to say in the moment, whatever channels through me, is the thing. So yeah, hearing some people, souls are tired. It has been a week over here in my life, in my home, in my world. I know that lots of other humans are having weeks too. So if that's happening for you, witnessing you, seeing you, happy to hear you out. We had a post I think 2 days ago that I put up just asking you all if you wanted to process through anything to do that. So please go find that if that would feel good for you. We'd love to have you on there. Yeah, so souls are tired right now. So like even just taking a deep breath here and just like witnessing that the soul is tired, because the soul is living in a body. It's connected to your body. And that's what we're talking about today, is our actual physical bodies, how we see our bodies, how we relate with our bodies, how we connect to our bodies, how we treat our bodies, and the shame that can be wrapped up in all of those ways that we interact with our bodies due to past painful learning, due to past painful experiences. And here's the thing. I think that this is the overarching message that I would like to share with y'all today, that I would like to shout from the rooftops to everybody, is in terms of shame and body image, how we see our physical vessels, right, that hold us as humans. There are a lot of different messages out there in terms of how we're even supposed to do that, right? And so just recognizing that the way that you relate to your body largely depends on how you learned how to relate to your body, right? So there are some of us who are very, very connected with our bodies and are very sensitive to the changes that happen in our bodies. There are others of us that are very disconnected from our bodies, or disconnected from parts of our bodies because they've experienced trauma, or because we've had really shameful experiences around those pieces and parts of ourselves. And then there are others of us that have had overarching messages of like, this is how you view yourself, this is how you treat yourself, this is how we treat bodies, that have been helpful. And then some of us have had messages that have been harmful, right? So I think one of the places to start is really looking at our bodies as, do we see them as objects or not, right? Do we see them as extensions of ourself, or do we see them as part of ourself, right? So one of the things that we know, and Kasia Urbanic talks about this, she has a famous TED Talk about this. She wrote Unbound, The Woman's Guide to Power. And she talks about this, and I want to take her message even a step further, because when she talks about whether or not we see our bodies as objects versus instruments, and I'll explain that in a second, she speaks on this from the typical perspective that women's bodies are seen as objects and men's bodies are seen as instruments. And while I feel like that generalization is relatively accurate, there are lots of ways in which we objectify men's bodies as well. And so as we're having this conversation, I really just want to take gender out of it and have a conversation about humanity in general and how we objectify our bodies, and then versus how we see our bodies as instruments for our souls. So when we think about, a lot of us feel shame around our bodies because we see our bodies as objects. And some of us feel shame around our bodies because we see them as instruments. And some of us feel shame around our bodies because we see them as both. So when we see our bodies as objects, what we are doing is saying, my body is designed for somebody else to use, right? My body is designed for someone else to view, to judge, not to use. That's actually more instrumentation. But from an objectification standpoint, my body is something to be viewed and judged. My body is something to be viewed and judged. And my soul, my character, my identity is tied to how my body is judged and how it is viewed, right? When we objectify the body, what we do is we make the physical appearance of the body the priority, and then we tie the character and the identity to that based on what we see. So examples of this are you looking at me right now. If I walked into a boardroom wearing my big hoop earrings and my I'm Not For Everyone t-shirt and my black eyeliner, the objectification that would likely happen there is somebody looking at me and making assumptions about who I am as a human based on what they're seeing. Me walking in a bigger body, right, in a size 16 body, into a room or into a beauty pageant or into a space where the average body is a size 4 or a 6, the judgment, the thought processes around who I am as a person based on what I look like in comparison to everyone else, that's objectification. Right? Here's the thing about humanity is we are one of the beautiful ways that humans save brain energy and honestly stay alive is something called categorization. What we do is we make connections and create categories in our brains of people. And so this is why we say people are in bigger bodies or in smaller bodies, right? People are this race or this race. People are this gender or this gender. People are this sex or this sex. People wear makeup or don't wear makeup, right? People have breasts or they don't have breasts. And our eyes and our brain automatically do this on a consistent basis all the time. We're constantly categorizing people based on what they look like. That is a safety mechanism, right? Because if somebody looks like someone else who has been very unsafe in our past, it's helpful to recognize that sometimes, right? If it had nothing to do with their appearance, then that may not be so helpful, right? And the piece of this is when we then, with our human brain and with our emotional brains, tie meaning to what people look like, that's where shame pieces can be brought in, right? One of the experiences that I had, yes, Caitlin, kids are expert at this and they often blurt out the category they identify, and we get upset or we tell our children not to do this. And the reason we're telling our children not to do this is because we have connections, emotional and thought-based connections to the categories that they are identifying, but our kids don't. Our kids haven't tied these categorizations to meaning yet, right? They're simply saying this person can walk and this person can't. This person has really dark skin and this person doesn't. That's all they're trying to do, is just understand, okay, what categories am I putting people into? We, as we grow up, start assigning meaning based on our experiences to what that is, right? The darker the skin, the less trustworthy the person is, if we're raised by people who believe that. The bigger the woman, the less she cares about herself, the less attractive she is, right? We start to add these categorizations based off of interactions that we see from adults, from our caregivers, from the outside world as we're growing. And also, so we make these like implicit observations, right? Where we're like, every time we get around Black people, mom gets weird, right? Or we hear mom say things like this. Every time we're around somebody whose gender dad can't identify, he makes a joke, right? They start to implicitly pick up on this stuff, or sometimes they just hear the messages outright, right? If you're raised by people who are racist, who are misogynist, who are ableist, who are ageist, people who actively say like, nope, this physical expression of your body is worse than or bad compared to others, right? So going back to this example, right? I had this moment earlier this week where I was asked to be featured in a Black History article. And I had this remembrance of this very traumatic experience that I've had. And I've had multiple traumatic experiences around my race and my the amount of melanin or lack thereof that is in my skin as a biracial human, multiracial human. And I went directly back to this point where I remembered my body being objectified because in another space, someone had told or suggested that I promote a retail product that I had at the time on a Black owned business page. And I did that. And I had both a white woman and a Black woman within an hour come on there and tell me that I was racist and I was wrong for taking up space in a Black space. And when they then found out I was Black, there was no real apology. It was just, well, we couldn't tell that from your photo. Right. And then it led to this big conversation around, okay, are we defining race and ethnicity by what we can see? Or are we defining race and ethnicity by how somebody identifies, right? And this has been a really confusing thing for people in my life. My entire life is seeing my father who's Black and seeing my mother who's white and seeing me. And sometimes if I was just with my father, or my dad is just with my kids who are only a quarter Black and do not look Black at all, especially my son. People trying to categorize that relationship in their minds and having a very hard time because their brain can't make sense of it. And when people's brains can't make sense of things, a lot of times they say things that are very nonsensical. And those things can feel very hurtful when you don't understand the place that they're coming from, right? So I like to use that example because as this happened this week where I was asked to be in this featured article, I'm sitting over here thinking, how do I let people know that I'm biracial, that I am Black, so no one gets confused, right? And then recognizing that's a trauma response of my own, that I'm trying to control other people's expectation or prevent these comments from being said again. And that's me objectifying myself. Right? Explaining my appearance so that other people can feel more comfortable. Right? So there's ways in which we objectify ourselves where we're either explaining why we look the way that we do, why we're showing up the way that we do. Anyone ever do this when you run into somebody that you don't know out and you don't have makeup on, or you maybe have your pajama pants on still and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, I'm such a mess, but like this is what happened to my day to day. Why are you explaining that? We're explaining that because we're afraid that this person is going to categorize us or characterize us in a way where, right? We don't want to be perceived that way. That feels shameful for us. So we're explaining this. Shannon, yes, a very tricky topic when you factor in white privilege, because I do present in some spaces white. However, if most Black people, when I meet them, they're like, okay, so who's Black? White people perceive me as white, and Black people most of the time perceive me as Black. They see, because everyone see, this is the other piece of identifying, right? Of characterizing, we see ourselves in others. We see the pieces and parts of ourselves in others, oftentimes. So I love white people tell me I present white, and Black people are like, I know you're Black. It's fine. Right? Most of the time. So my point here is like, when we think about how we are explaining ourselves to others, what are you doing? Where are you qualifying how you're showing up, how you're presenting, what you look like? Where are you offering explanations where no one has asked you for one? Because of past painful experiences, because of shame you have in showing up the way that you do. Oh, all good, Shannon. Seriously. So thinking about, that's a trauma response, right? That's a little bit of a fawn response. I'm going to manipulate so this person doesn't feel threatening, except this person doesn't actually feel threatening. It's their perception of me that feels threatening, right? This is why also oftentimes I really go after professionalism. Being a professor and a nurse practitioner for over a decade combined, there's so much about professionalism and how we have to look in order to have our patients, quote unquote, trust us. Right? Or is, having somebody mention something about, dress codes, right? If you wear these things, you will not be accepted. If you don't wear these things, you won't be accepted, right? There's two different kinds of dress codes. This is how you have to dress. This is how you can't dress. And a lot of times these dress codes have to do with the objectification of our bodies, because it has to do with what other people will perceive about us if we show up that way, right? Is it my problem that you're distracted by my cleavage as we are having a professional conversation? I don't think so. As someone who has had professional conversations around running multiple six-figure businesses, conversations around changing tax statuses, conversations around where we're going to invest versus who we're going to bring on from team members, and all of these things, from bed, from my car, with kids running around in the background, in a bathrobe, in the bath. And being able to have those conversations and not get distracted by what somebody looks like on the opposite side of this, I will tell you that this idea of professionalism is again about objectification. What do we make it mean when somebody shows up disheveled to work? Here's the thing, if somebody's showing up disheveled to work multiple days in a row, maybe I need to check in on them as opposed to report them, right? So that's the objectification piece. And oh my goodness, we're going to talk about sex next week. I'm not even sure what I'm saying in that at this point. That is what I'm going to prepare for. But when we think about this and bringing sex in as well, the idea that my body gets objectified and the amount of physical intimacy, the amount of pleasure I get, the amount of connection that I get is based on what my body looks like. That's terrifying. And there's so much shame wrapped around that, right? This is why women right now are simultaneously in the same offices getting breast reductions and breast augmentation. This is why, and there is no shame. I want to be explicitly clear on this. There's no shame in getting plastic surgery or doing something to modify your body, or in wearing makeup, or in adorning your body with whatever you want, tattoos, whatever. But that's the point. How does it make you feel? How does it allow you to be an instrument for your soul? If the things that you do to your body create expansion and allow you to be more full, your soul to be more fully expressed, that is an entirely different scenario than doing things and changing the way that your body looks in order to change how you are perceived. One is an internal experience outward, one is an external experience inward. Right? So objectification from a sexual perspective, I remember when I was in high school feeling so unattractive. So unattractive. I wanted all of the boys to like me, right? And this was coming also from some other traumatic places of feeling like I wasn't worthy and feeling like I wasn't enough, right? I was too much and not enough at the same time. Anyone can relate to that? Too much and not enough. Kasia Ronick also calls that the good girl double bind. We're bound by the not enoughness and we're bound by the too muchness, right? And so then we try to find this nice little teeny tiny eeny weeny place in the middle where we're not enough, like where we're not too much, but we're also just like more than enough. I remember being in that place, and then I remember going to college and meeting my husband and actually feeling very not objectified at all, feeling very accepted and loved for who I was on the inside and on the outside. And what I thought was so fascinating was ending up talking to people from from high school and then being like, oh my gosh, like people thought you were so attractive, but you were like so standoffish and like so not approachable that like people just left you alone. And I was like, oh, good to know, right? I realized that I was objectifying myself and creating this space in which, fair enough, society, messaging, social media, news media, all the things were telling me, nope, this isn't a thing for you. You don't get this. And then having that experience afterwards, really hearing like, no, that's actually something that you kind of placed on yourself, right? Yes, Julie, I'm so glad you're bringing up this example of girls not being allowed to wear clothes that show their shoulders, but boys are. The fingertip rule for our skirts, right? I remember not being allowed to wear an outfit that I loved, that I was so excited that I picked out to my homecoming dance because it was quote unquote too sexual. Let alone the fact that the music that they're playing at the homecoming dance and the things that are happening on the dance floor at the homecoming dance are overtly sexual. That's okay. But your outfit is going to cause distraction or cause a guy to not be able to control himself. Sorry, that sounds like that guy's problem, not my problem. Again. So when we start actually viewing our bodies as instruments, right? And this is how men are typically taught, although a lot of men experience objectification too. So we do not want to create a situation where we're saying this is what happens for women and this is what happens for men. We also have non-binary people in here too. So that's not what we want. But when we look at how our bodies are typically objectified, and then we think about how would it feel to use my body as an instrument, this is also like, this can be a very shame releasing experience for people. That's how I now see my body. My body is an instrument for my work, for my love, for my pleasure, for my joy, for my connection, for my passion. It's an instrument. It's something that allows me, gives me the extreme privilege of getting to show up in the world the way that I desire. And there can be some shame in having our bodies used as an instrument. And also, y'all, let me just say this too. We get to remove the shame around objectification as well, because sometimes it does feel really good to have somebody like look at us and see us and be like, I love this, right? I love this. I am seeing this and experiencing this, and it is enjoyable, right? And that gets to be a very shame-free way of experiencing your body, is having somebody look at your body and be like, yes, I want this. This is amazing. But also coming from a place of, and if you want to do something different with this, I'm here for that too, because what I'm enjoying is seeing your expression of yourself. What I'm enjoying is seeing your soul come through your body, right? One of the places I see this is with my husband. I never used to let him touch my stomach because it felt like that's the part of me that felt the most shameful. Like that is where I was gaining all of my weight, which makes sense now because complex PTSD and cortisol and all of the things. But I didn't get that. And I remember one day my husband being like, I don't get how you don't like your stomach. And I was like, tell me more, because I don't get how you do. And he was like, I watched you birth 2 babies at once after holding them inside, one of whom was supremely sick, and you fighting to keep them in your body for 35 weeks. And then I watched you have them 7 minutes apart, get up, walk 2 hours later. Like your stomach is like one of the most powerful parts about you. He's like, every time I touch that, I think of the fact that you gave me our kids. I think of the life that you held here. I think of the strength that required, especially with your chronic health conditions, how hard that was, how much pain you were in. He's like, it's one of my favorite parts. He's like, your stretch marks remind me of that. I love your stretch marks. I love running my hands across them. And from that moment forward, I was like, huh, why am I focusing on the fact that I've got extra skin there now, and that's like a little bit, that's the chubbier place on me? Like, why am I looking at my body and objectifying it like that? Doesn't make a lot of sense. So when I then started flipping, and there's been several women in this group that were instrumental in helping this flip. Erica Beale is in here. She has a group on body positivity. Kaylin, you are one of my new people that I love. Joe Henderson's in here. She's my nutrition, and she's my trainer and my nutrition coach. These are women that really modeled for me, like, you get to use your body as an instrument. Your body gets to stop being a distraction from the things that you want, right? And that's that stomach piece. It feels really good to have my stomach exposed. It feels really good to leave the lights on when I'm being intimate. It feels really good to do these things. And yet my body was distracting me from being able to do all those things because I was thinking about how I was being objectified. I was thinking about how I was being seen instead of how I felt, instead of how I could use my body to feel pleasure, instead of how I could use the world to feel good. So flipping to the using your body as an instrument, this is another piece where we have to be careful from a shame perspective, because sometimes it can look like instrumentation. It can look like we're using the body as an instrument, and really it's just another form of objectification, where people say like, oh my gosh, yes, like I am using my body and I am fueling it in the most nutritious, healthiest ways. And I am moving it only in the ways that really, really serve it. And yet when we get behind it, the instrumentation is still a means to an end of objectification, right? I'm fueling my body with only the most healthiest foods because it feels good. And also because then my body will look better. I'm exercising and moving my body only in ways that feel good, and also because I think that maybe it'll help me lose weight, or it'll tighten up my butt, or it'll do this. Again, you want a tight butt? Go for it. But why? Why? The why is what matters. And so we get to ask ourselves that question of why. Here's the thing. I love seeing my tight butt in the mirror because I know how strong it is. I love going to the gym and working out because it feels so good to be able to like lift a lot. It's such a fun experience for me to see what my body can do after having so many years where my body and I were at war with each other. It's fun to push it a little bit, but only to a point that it feels healthy, right? I was supposed to work out this morning. I texted my trainer yesterday and said, you know what? I'm exhausted. My kids don't have school tomorrow. This is the first time I have to sleep in the last 2 weeks. I'm going to sleep in. And she was like, yeah. And you're also not working out tonight either. And I was like, okay. Right. So getting to know my body and really listening to it and what it needs and what it wants and letting it connect with my soul and spirit and like letting them fuel and feed each other is so beautiful. Some of y'all know this, but I have a health condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And I also have primary idiopathic lymphedema. I know, lots of big words. Basically, what that means is that my connective tissue is abnormal. So the elastin, the collagen in my body, the things that hold my joints and my bones and all of my things together are stretchier than normal. And when you're younger, that means that you dislocate things a lot. It means you hyperextend things a lot. It means you have a lot of pain that you don't really know where it's coming from. And so what was fascinating about my journey growing up is that I was just taught you're going to always be in pain. You're always going to have pain. So we just get used to that. And so my pain tolerance is kind of ridiculous. Like I don't really notice pain until I'm at maybe a 4 or 5 out of 10. Because I'm so used to living with that 1, 2, 3 level of pain all the time that it takes a good 4 out of 10, like a moderate sensation of pain or a new sensation of pain for me to notice it. And so part of using my body as an instrument is really starting to pay more attention to it, right? When we have instruments that really allow us to do helpful things in our lives, right? Like let's just take a musical instrument let's use that as an example. That allows me to make the most beautiful music. It allows me to express myself. It allows me to do these things. And if I don't take care of that instrument, I used to play the flute and the cello and the guitar. If I didn't take care of those instruments, which sometimes I didn't as a kid, let's be honest, they didn't play as well. They didn't work as well. If that was out of tune, it didn't matter what kind of music I was playing. It didn't matter if my hands were in the right spot. It didn't matter any of that. It wasn't going to come out right. And so now recognizing that I get to use my body as an instrument and that my music isn't going to sound the way that somebody else's music does. You know, it's ableist for us to say, yep, like everyone gets to use their instrument the same way. Some of us have instruments that require a lot more tuning, that require a lot more tune up, that require a lot more repair, that require a lot more care than other people's instruments. And when we don't take that into consideration, and a lot of times we have shame around that, if you have a chronic illness or you have a health issue, when we feel shame around not being able to use our instruments the way that other people do, or use them as often, or need to put more time and energy into caring for them, when we make ourselves feel wrong and bad for that, or when other people have made us feel wrong and bad for that, and we've internalized it, that's problematic. It's okay if your instrument needs more care. It's normal. It's allowed, it's safe for you to take the time and to maybe not play as much music as somebody else does. Yeah, and these aren't just physical ailments as well, Sarah. Thank you for pointing that out. You know, sometimes it's mental health, sometimes it's emotional health. Complex PTSD person saying all of these things, that has affected me mentally, that has affected me emotionally, that has affected me physically. And sometimes I just need to tune up my instrument more or spend time caring for my instrument instead of using it to play. And the cool part about this is that the more I make sure that my instrument has what it needs, the more I define and really figure out what exactly my instrument needs, right? Because every instrument's different. Even if they're in the same category, they're different. Figuring out what mine needs to, and being able to really pay attention to when something is off with the music is so powerful and so helpful. So those are my thoughts for today. Really thinking about, where are you shaming yourself? Where are you allowing others to shame yourself? Where have you experienced shame in the past around objectification? How are you perpetuating that objectification for yourself and for others? Whether it's around your size, or it's around your shape, or it's around specific body parts, or it's around your mind, or it's around your race and ethnicity, your skin color, whatever. How are you objectifying yourself? Where have you been objectified? Where would you like to stop doing that? Right? And then thinking about this from an instrument standpoint. What does your instrument need? What kind of music can you play? What kind of beauty can you bring into the world when you really check in and start living more in and with and in connection with your instrument, aka your body, giving it what it needs, not shaming yourself around that? What beauty can you go out and create? And here's the last thing I'll say. Some of us are on this earth to create freaking masterpiece operas or musical soundtracks that are well known to billions of people. Some of us are here to play songs to rooms of a couple hundred or a couple thousand, or maybe even less than that. And that's okay too. We don't all have the same, we're not all going to play the same music. We're not all going to play to the same size crowds. We're not all going to have the same influence. We're not going to all have the same reach. And it still matters. It's still important. And your body is the way that you do that. And so being able to be fully expressed and show up and externalize your personality the way that feels best for you with your body, both from a physical perspective and from a creative perspective, is really important to think about. It's really important to give pause and attention to. So I love you all. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your week. I will come back if you're watching this on the replay, #replay. I will come back and say hi. For those of you who hung with me live, thank you so much. I really appreciate all the comments. If you're listening on the podcast, feel free to come in the group. We have it linked in the show notes. We would love to have you join us live. And also feel free to share this with somebody that you think might need to hear this. Invite somebody into the group, share the podcast episode, whatever feels best for you, whichever avenue is most applicable. And I will see you around. Bye, y'all.